Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss today's news on immigration as the latest figures are out. Basically, you would think Brexiteers would be feeling a little bit sheepish right now, but they seem to be furious about what is, after all, their own handiwork. How dare the predicted consequences of my actions actually come true? But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So, a great deal of the focus from Brexiteers in 2016 was on immigration. Specifically immigration from outside the EU, oddly enough. We tried to tell them. We said, you do know that the immigration you're complaining about isn't a result of EU membership, don't you? In fact, our EU membership actually gives us a way to work as a continent to manage the issue instead of having to deal with it all on our own. No, we must end freedom of movement, they said. But it's only EU citizens who have freedom of movement. We have to stop them coming here claiming benefits, they said. But freedom of movement doesn't let you do that. It just means that EU citizens have the right to live and work anywhere in the single market, but they still have to have the means to do so if it's in a different country. Ironically, some of the immigration rules that Brexiteers complained about were not EU rules at all. They were UK rules. We had a looser attitude to immigration, even of EU citizens, than other EU countries. That's because we wanted to attract a large migrant workforce to power our economy. And the Conservatives, who do not like spending on education and training, for example, were the keenest of all, despite their public rhetoric. But the Brexiteers insisted immigration is too high, they said, and leaving the EU will deal with it. Well, we can see that since we began our hard Brexit in particular, net migration has just shot up. And I mean shot up. At this point, Brexiteers do not get to complain. It doesn't matter whether they accept that some of this is the result of leaving the Dublin Agreement or not, and it is only a small amount. They claimed that Brexit would reduce immigration, and it ended up massively increasing it. Much has been made of the fact that this is a record. Ed Conway, he's produced a chart comparing net migration as a percentage of the population, going right back to 1850. Before we had passports, before border controls were really a thing. It's not just that this is the highest on record. Look at the gradient. This graph isn't showing that, net migration has been increasing over time and that trend just carried on despite Brexit. Because if that were the case, then you'd still have to accept that Brexit did not actually reduce immigration at all. That those who said it would were wrong, or worse, they lied to you. This is the bare minimum conclusion to draw. That all the privations we've suffered as a result of Brexit, the problems for businesses and trade, the extra cost due to Brexit red tape, the shortages of certain food and medicines, the blithering idiots we now have leading the government, all of these downsides did not even result in that net reduction to immigration that Brexit supporters promised. That's the minimum conclusion. There is a more realistic one because this is not a continuation of a trend. The gradient is massive and coincides exactly with the hard Brexit. The gradient is extremely steep. It is impossible to escape from the fact that not only did Brexit not reduce immigration, but it's actively increased it. And I want people to consider something else as well. See, Brexit supporters may chunter about, it's illegal immigration, you see, the Rwanda plan is what's needed. That's all rhetoric about asylum. Asylum forms a small proportion of our net migration figures. The figures you're seeing in this graph is not mainly asylum seekers. It's people coming here with the full support of the Home Office. These are people who are effectively invited by the government, or maybe British citizens who couldn't afford to carry on living in the EU as non-EU citizens, or possibly because it's now harder for British citizens to emigrate. Remember, this is net migration. If we had more people emigrating, the numbers would be smaller. Asylum seekers make up only 11% of that figure that's out today. So even if you actually eliminated all asylum claims in the UK, which, by the way, would have serious international repercussions, then these net migration figures would still be at record levels, and that gradient would still be very steep. In other words, if anyone tries to, but illegal immigrants about these figures, set them right. Actually, as a little aside, for all those Brexit supporters who confuse these net migration figures with asylum issues, which I get, by the way. I understand that because the media keep amplifying asylum issues so much that I get where people can think that is the bulk of immigration, but it's absolutely not. But on this auspicious day, the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who, it occurs to me as a couple of things that the archetypal Brexiteer might need to consider. First of all, I already pointed it out before, Jesus is, of course, the most famous refugee in history, which should really get all those fake Christians like Rees-Mogg to think again. But the Doctor is probably the most famous illegal immigrant in fiction. But anyway, where does this leave us? Brexiteers claimed that Brexit would reduce immigration. The Tories hailed the end of freedom of movement. The Brexiteers went, fantastic. They were not quite so happy when they tried to go on holiday, but, you know, for that moment in time, they were quite happy. Then they introduced their shiny new points-based immigration system. Now, can you think of any leading Brexiteers, outside the Tory party even, who disapproved of these measures? Can you say any, oh no, this points-based immigration system's a load of crap? Can you think of anyone who said that? No, nor can I. So this isn't a case of Farage getting to claim that the Tories just cocked it up. They did what he suggested they do, and he did not disapprove at the time. So why do we have record net migration then? It's not asylum, as I've already explained. It's a sudden upwards trend which occurred the moment we left the single market. And the irony is that in trying to force immigration down, the Tories and their Brexit brethren are just going to make things worse. See, they've identified, because basically in their minds, the Tories just think we've just got to get the number down. You know, there's no distinction between immigration that's beneficial and immigration that's not. It's just, oh, no, big number, need to get it down. So they've identified dependents of foreign students and NHS workers, for example. They're restricting the number of dependents you can bring with you as a foreign student, to which it's worth asking passing Brexiteers how that helps. If we reduce the number of foreign students studying here, which is what you will do if you say you can't bring your dependents, who all pay their own way, by the way, and contribute to our local economies by spending in it, then we hurt British businesses and harm GDP. If we say that NHS workers can only have one dependent, which has been proposed by the Tories, that's not a policy, but it has been proposed, same thing applies. Only we get even more severe shortages of staff in the NHS. How exactly does that help? And where's the argument for restricting dependents anyway? What's the usual argument? But they're taking our jobs. Dependents? They're called dependents for a reason, you know. Also, nobody was taking your jobs, as is evidenced by the fact that British businesses are unable to recruit workers now. In fact, if you wanted a single measure of whether immigration is too high or not high enough, I get that it's complex and there could be multiple measures. But if you wanted a simple measure, surely you'd look at unfilled job vacancies. Because if businesses collectively across the country are unable to fill vacancies on a large scale, as is happening now, surely that's a clear sign that there aren't enough workers either in those areas or with the right skills in those areas. You don't get to complain about pay, oh, they should just pay more, because the government can control that, right? So the evidence actually suggests that, if anything, immigration isn't high enough. Or maybe, just maybe, the reduction in EU-based immigration has created problems. You know, lots of skilled workers, culturally very similar to us, have been told to bog off. Because although net migration is massively up, EU-based migration is down. Of course it is. We ended freedom of movement. We made it a hassle to come and work in the UK. But it didn't reduce immigration. It just meant that we have way more migrants from Asia and Africa. Oh, but don't worry. Rishi Sunak wants a trade deal with India, and what India are insisting on is easier visas for Indian workers, which will mean way more visas for Indian workers, despite what the government say. And at this point, it's worth asking, of all the Brexit promises, which ones actually came true? Are there any? It's no wonder that Nigel Farage, when pushed this week to name a benefit of Brexit for ordinary people, could only say, oh, they feel independent. But you listen to pro-Brexit commentators today and they're all really unhappy. Are they apologising? Are they unhappy because they got it wrong? No, they're furious. They're still blaming others. I mean, there comes a point where you have to say that people this childish just need to be ignored if we're ever going to get the country functioning again. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.